which appealingly is named the dumpster cube. Um, immediately, immediately saw that. Thanks, Ambrose, for hitting that command. Immediately saw this and thought, "Yep, that's the cube that I want to talk about." Um, sounds like something I would do. So the let me get our notes up as well. Um, so it seems to me, and I hopefully Jake hasn't died of boredom yet, but it seems to me like there's kind of two veins that inspired this cube, and one is right in the write up. Jake mentions, or Djake as I like to call him, mentions the Ante cards being a question in his mind. Where was Garfield going with this? What was the idea behind these, and what would happen if it was successful? And then behind that is, well, hang on, because obviously we all covet these little highly expensive pieces of cardboard, and no one wants to lose that one cool card out of their deck. So what if instead of looking at this as a collector thing, they looked at it more, I love this, he's compared it to pogs or marbles, right? Which is a very fluid ownership, right? You they come and they go. So that seems to be kind of the key design inspiration here. And then it feels to me like, again, this theme here, Magic's rejected and unplayed cards. So as I looked through, it looked like sort of a place where if you took the ultimate cube, and just took literally every single of the absolute best broken, you know, the most efficient cards in Magic, and took those out, what are you left with? Again, the sort of rejected or unplayable cards seems to be another axis of design in here. And then, very interestingly, there's actually, I guess, quite a lot to go over in the setup here. There's no land station, so you start with 4 lands of each basic, and you get an updated jeweled bird, which has been, as you can see here, carefully and painstakingly altered, so that rather than drawing a card, you can put any card from Ante into your hand and put jeweled bird in its place, which is kind of cool. But you start with 4 of each basic, so anteing a basic land is actually horrifying because you only had the 4 to begin with. And then he's got, and this is the part that really honestly was like sealed it for me that I wanted to talk about this cube. He's created a 1 versus 1 pickup format called Starter Deck Sealed. You get 3 packs of cards, you put your land kit into it, you shuffle and play. No looking and no deck building. And as someone whose very first purchase of Magic cards was a starter deck, and you're back in, I don't know, revised or something, I feel that. I feel that. that's some wild stuff right there. Like, I mean, I don't know. That's how Magic was, right? Like, you didn't worry about fixing. Like, dual lands weren't a thing. You weren't, if you wanted to cast your Craw Worm, you had to get 6 lands down, and that might take you, I don't know, 12 turns. Oh, yeah. So, he describes it as the goal as featuring cards that don't normally get played in a wild, casual, and intuitive cube experience, catering to both a quick 1 versus 1 limited environment and a deep drafted tournament for spikes. What a project.
It really is. I think we should read. Here, I'm going to read some of the intro speech. Can I read
Please,
some of
yeah, no,
the?
please do. I didn't want it to be an hour of me reading solo. So yes, please, reading
Yeah, I'm gonna.
from the
I'll read
class. Get in there.
because um, Jake has written that it's a speech, so
It
I
is,
feel
yeah.
like it deserves to be read. although possibly like the first paragraph and not necessarily the
Yeah.
18-page speech
Yeah.
he's written here, and which I have read and entirely
Yeah.
appreciated.
I will say for sure we won't read the whole thing live, but everyone should read this carefully. It's well worded. It's well
Yeah, it's
worded.
brilliant for sure. Born from forgotten mechanics, betrothed to draft chaff and silver borders, we welcome you to the celebratory amalgam of Dominaria's rejects. Relish in the dumpster cube. As we near the verge of these archetypes' extinctions, we must hold fast to the fading cards that may never see the light of play again. Let us lift the bin lid to the garbage, to the gathering cesspool. Feel the moist, buffeting pungency waft past on butterfly wings. Savor the juicy scent of fruited vinegar. Breathe deep and bear the browning of our lungs. Probably some ASMR. Could maybe make money doing that. But before we dive headfirst and sink our teeth into the sloppy puddles of Garfield's goop, I must request you bear in mind the dumpster cube's unique stipulations. Okay, how's that?
This is nothing on my stream has ever peaked as hard as that. That's the best thing I've ever fucking seen.
Oh, good.
So
Well, then
someone mentioned that when he broke this speech out at a local beer joint before cracking pats and drafting, they got chills.
oh, that's awesome.
Dan, I think you're on the right track mixing this to scary music. We need some like eerie background, creaky staircase kind of music there. Um, yeah, yeah. Jake, I think you should get together with John and get him to actually do like do this whole thing for you, recorded. Because that was awesome.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great write-up. I love the love that Jake has put into writing this thing and how evocative it is, and like how
No, it's
you know,
so it's well written. I mean,
yeah,
it
and
is,
it really delivers his excitement and enthusiasm for the project. And
and I
it's yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I would say I really I mean, not everyone comes to Cube for the same reasons or from the same place. I really respect and love so much when a cube has a detailed write up, when people put effort beyond just saying, here are my 10 archetypes or whatever. I love when someone talks about, and I guess that's obvious reasons, right? Cube streamer. But I love when someone writes something that's, it's a speech, it's readable, it's flavorful. You can hear it in your head, or you can say it out loud, or maybe you find yourself saying it out loud, or you can do a dramatic reading of it. So I always love that. Vincent Price. So and then the other thing that I want to throw out here, now this one kind of came into our lap circuitously, this cube. But the other thing that immediately interested me, and Jake, maybe we'll chat more in the Discord later, but I actually had recently been talking both in the Discord and in real life to a friend of mine, to my kind of main cube design, sounding board, about a cube built around Ante, because the concept as a mechanic does interest me as well. And I actually really like the idea that you can not just ante at the beginning of the game, but you can ante or interact with the ante, much like the way that we now interact with the exile zone, which is to say you can put things in and take things out and cast things from it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now where that eventually or immediately led to was my friend and I talking about the concept of an actual custom cube where it's 360 custom cards, but built around the principles that encourage ante and make it fun. So seeing someone else pursue that idea is very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, I love the ante concept. It's a really interesting idea trying to make that work. Or I mean, making that work.
Yep. Well,
Um,
and where else do you do it but cube, right? I mean, the whole point is that it's supposed to change ownership, but you don't actually want to do that. Most of us don't
yes.
actually want to do that. Well, the perfect environment is cube because at the end of the day, there's no actual change in ownership. It's just a change in the temporary ownership during your tournament or whatever your tournament being the word for whatever your play for that day is. So the idea that you could draft, 45 whatever ish cards and then end up with a very different pile by the end of 3 rounds or whatever is pretty cool.
It is. Jake mentions this somewhere in his write-up. He talks about one of the reasons that Ante is a sticking point for some people, a sort of mental sticking point that they don't want to engage with, and that was maybe holding Magic back in its earliest days, is a fear of losing one's cards, for
Yep.
goodness sake. So I'm totally with you,
Yep.
JJ. Cube is absolutely, absolutely the place to do it, where you don't have to. Well, I mean, I think Jake is trying to engage some fear of losing one's one's
Oh
cards.
yeah.
It's in this, safe sandbox
Yep.
environment, of
Yep.
course. So
Yep.
that's a super cool idea.
Yeah, you should be afraid of it because obviously you've got a deck that you drafted and you're if it's in your deck you wanted to play it, but um uh you know I like again I literally remember playing for Ante and like after maybe the first time my friend and it was just me and one literally my best friend. I mean, we're still friends. It's been decades. We're still friends. But we looked at each other and we're like, well, maybe we just like look at 5 cards and then pick one to ante. And then like, within a week we were like, what if we just didn't ante? And it was like, yeah, that
Right,
that makes sense. And like we just stopped
right.
because yeah, I mean, you ante your best card in the deck. It's like, well, fuck this game. So why
Yeah,
am I even playing?
yeah.
Um,
It's such a cool notion in the way that Jake has tweaked it and deployed it here. I love the idea of the progressive deck that keeps changing. I've got some fondness for pack wars. I've done this a few times. Have you all done this where you start
oh yeah.
off with, I guess you start off with one pack? Is that how it works? And then every time you win, you get another pack or something?
Oh, I mean, I've just always done like if my son and I have packs, we just do pack wars with them. I haven't ever played it with like the as an ongoing thing.
I've been to a couple of things at a LGS. This has been years and years and years, but there were these events where like you got a pack of cards,
Hmm.
and then and then you just had to play with that pack of cards,
Yep.
and you had access to a land station.
Yep.
Maybe you got 2 packs of cards, but it wasn't many,
Right.
And then every time you won, you got another pack or something.
Okay.
And then I've also done something that's, I think, more like what Jake is describing here, where friends and I have like bought a box or whatever, and then we each take, say, 3 packs and make a really limited sealed deck.
Mm-hmm.
And then after each match, everybody gets to add another pack and
Yep.
then like redesign the thing. And then we'd stop once we were working with like 7 packs or something. And it felt like the decks get to evolve sometimes in a linear way, sometimes in radically new directions.
Interesting.
Options just increase. It's super exciting. So, anyway, I love the like
Yeah.
evolving deck idea. That's super cool.
Yep. Um,
Um,
okay, so there's quite a lot in the garbage gatherer. Uh, if there's ever awards for this, I think Jake is a shoe in for the continuous flavor award. Um, oh, and Dan, thank you. So I guess Mini Masters is the tournament name for what you were describing. You get
mm,
1 pack with 3 of each basic. That sounds familiar. I feel like maybe I've done that. Um, um, Now I've fallen into my son and I always do Pai Gao Pack Wars, which is where you divide your pack into 5 piles of 3 cards, and you just have infinite mana, um, and you play basically 5 very quick hands against each other. But anyway, Um,
Yeah. Right. So this is a cool approach to doing this. And Jake is taking Ante in new directions, as we see from the his write up here. So how matches progress depends on the Ante concept. That's super awesome, um, because one's deck is changing. Fixing is limited by the Ante concept,
mhm.
um, because we've got like sort of a desert cube idea that
Right.
that JJ was describing to us earlier, where we start with four basics or whatever. Cards have been eroded to work with Ante.
Yep.
Um, certain effects have a different cost that relies on Ante.
Oh yeah.
I think that's super smart too.
Oh, it's
JJ,
fantastic.
yeah. You'll remember, JJ, when we were talking on Chateau Cube
Oh
the
yeah.
other day, we were talking about using counters as another resource, and how we
Yes.
like,
Yes.
plus one counters not just growing your guy, but when you can use it to, I don't know, pay for effects or trade it in for trade a counter for a card and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Um, Jake has done a similar thing whereby he's made Ante a resource
Yep.
that one has to pay for, or one has to spend. So, like, some guys have effects where um, there may be a guy with a shatter effect stapled onto it, but in order, but as an additional cost to tapping the guy and shattering the thing, you have to ante a card.
Yep.
Or I may be misquoting the thing, but I think there are
That's
cards,
the concept. Yeah.
that work like that. So then ante becomes another resource, right? Like mana
Yep.
and like time
Yep.
and so on. That's brilliant. I think I
Well, and
love that.
what I love about that is we're familiar with the concept of uh, losing cards as a cost, right? As an additional cost, discard, or as an additional cost,
Mm,
mill, additional cost,
yeah,
sacrifice, exile. This is like exiling as a cost, except there's an added cost, which is my opponent gets it if it doesn't pay off. So
right.
in the truest sense, you are gambling with that resource. You are truly saying it's like life. The more life you pay, the more you have to win with that effect, right? Pay 19 life, win the game is fine. Pay 20 life is not. So I love the idea that ante is part of the cost here. I think that's probably the most important part of trying to get ante into a cube environment like this is you've got to have a way to trade that resource in for something. Um,
Yeah,
it's challenging.
yeah, yeah. That's super cool. And oh yeah, that's really interesting. M. Bodwin, sorry, the you
We'll call you
description here of
M.
willing to shatter
Yeah.
shatter the Ulamog's crusher that's been eroded to be an art. Yeah, I saw that all of these all of the colorless cards, the Eldrazi, have been eroded to be artifacts.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Let me pull that up too. The Crusher, Lumax Crusher.
Yeah, and all these different ingesters and so on. I saw Jake had scrolled artifact beside beside each of those guys.
Yeah. So this one requires you
Matt,
to
okay,
ante
thanks,
three
Matt.
cards to play it. Um, okay. Hi, Matt. So Matt pointed out that if you're holding an Ulamog's Crusher and you've got the 8 mana, but you're at 2 life, and your opponent has cards in hand, you're like really worried. Do I want to ante 3 to play this in a relatively low power environment, which is where this shines. I mean, in Pauper, an 8/8 Annihilator 2 is quite good, but you really got to think about whether or not you want to do that. Um, um, you got to think really hard about whether or not you want to put those 3 cards in there, and when you're close to losing, it's an easy decision when you're when you're up, right? Um, but when you're down, that can be a real cost. Um,
Yeah, and there are a lot of artifact destruction effects, as I recall,
right.
in the cube. So I mean, that's a risk for
Yep.
sure.
Yep. For sure.
Lots of artifact removal, um, which is kind of interesting. Yeah,
Yep.
and anyway, that's a cool thing.
So
That's
let me get into the spreadsheet a little bit. Um,
Nice.
we are on the almost polar opposite of the last cube that we just looked at, in that this has a deep 114 multicolor section or gold section. We have a 193, of which 111 are colorless creatures, and we seem to have lost. Oh, there he is. Welcome back.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep. We get a little latency there, or technical issue.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
You're good. No, you're good.
Interrupted you.
Quite all right. Yeah, I was just saying. I was just looking at the spreadsheet aesthetics, as it were. Super deep multicolor, even deeper colorless section. With a few. Okay, so there's a few things. With that are not singleton, that are duplicate or more.
Mm, yeah.
Presumably,
like-
presumably these are partly balance issues.
Yeah, that's cool. A bunch of the Ante stuff, which sort of makes sense.
Yep.
A lot of things interact with Ante. But then also there's things like Glint Nest, Crane, and I kind of love that sweet little bird.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It does a lot of
I
work.
th- yeah, I think that's a really cool
Isn't
card.
that?
I'm not
Oh, it's a
running
four
it
drop.
currently in any of my cubes, but I've run versions of cubes that go push even harder into artifacts than I'm doing currently, and that little guy is just such a workhorse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, it replaces itself with
Right.
an artifact,
Right.
and it's just this fine little wall. A 2 mana 1/3 that flies.
Yeah.
And that just blocks anything at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Turns 2, 3, and maybe 4. You've got a decent defender, and then you've already gotten the work out of it. So if you have to sack it to block a 4/4 or something, you're probably pretty happy with that, because you're sitting on an artifact that you actually wanted. And in this, with Eldrazi being artifacts, and with there being a number of artifacts that have been errataed to include anti stuff. Like I was just looking down at like Chaos Orb, and like the Bronze Calendar, which lets you anti from your sideboard and stuff like that. Those are probably quite valuable. Digging up an artifact is undoubtedly quite powerful.
Yeah, right. So that card makes sense as a duplicate. I like that.
Yep.
And also, just since this was a starting point in talking about Dan's cube, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the flavor here too. On like setting aside any gameplay concerns and so on, because this looks like a super well designed, really fun, totally unique
Oh,
environment.
for sure.
But also, of course, it's the dumpster cube, and it's just so charming that Jake has managed to fit in all of these cards like Garbage Fire and Junk Diver and Relic Golem and
Yeah.
Scrapyard
Yep.
Recombiner, and just like a million different
Right.
cards.
Flavor inclusions.
Yeah, right. The flavor
Yeah.
of the thing is so
I
cool.
I was gonna give him trouble, because someone mentioned earlier that Seeker of the Way was in the garbage cube, and that seemed like no, that's actually a good card. So I was gonna give him some guff about Scavenging Ooze, again just being kind of a cube staple, but it literally has a dumpster on it, so I can't. I Nope,
Oh, that's great.
got it approved. It's in. I get it.
It's great.
Um,
And
that's
isn't that Jake's? Is that your avatar, Jake, on like Twitter or something? Didn't you change your avatar to Scavenging News, or am I
this
thinking of
this
somebody else?
particular art, or that's fine.
Yeah, right. This particular art, is that
So
true?
what I chef's gifts for the flavor buffet this cube provides.
Oh,
Yep,
that's your
it's his
Discord thing. Oh, that's
discard.
great.
Abby. Um, yeah, I what I'm really enjoying, and I don't know how much we can even get into like actually looking at cards, because this is just an absolute, to use the word buffet, of uncards, playtest cards, obscure cards that don't see a lot of play for a variety of reasons. But I mean, like, I've played with Infinity Elemental. Like that's just a silly card. I absolutely love it. Um, I do not envy anyone the task of trying to balance this cube because it is the wild, wild west.
Yeah,
But it looks
that's
fun as
true.
hell. I will say that.
Yeah. Well, so we can yeah, let's I want to point out some of the kind of big picture things I noticed.
And I will also give Guff for Kiora Behemoth Beckoner. That is by no means a garbage card, but I suppose you have to have some fun real cards in here at some point.
That's true. That's true. Oh, well, yeah, that one actually, yeah, I got a point to make about her. Um, yes. Okay. So Jake, well, I'll start with that point that Jake's making here
Mm-hmm.
that JJ's brought up in highlighting Kiora. That. I love the relative paucity of cards that have high color commitments. There are very few double color pipped cards. Um, I think,
Yep.
this was my feeling as I was kind of glancing over the cube. There's a ton of hybrid mana cost cards,
Yep.
like Kiora, for example. There's a whole bunch of split cards,
Yep.
right? And then there's some like Phyrexian mana. There's mutagenic growth, and there's
Mm.
porcelain legionnaire, stuff like this. All of that I think is so smart because one of the founding principles of the cube, one of the guiding restrictions of the cube is this
Mm.
desert-ish cube thing where you're gated on the number of basics that you get
Yeah.
at the outset.
Yeah.
So really making sure that people have the ability to cast their spells seems key, and these are lots of great ways of helping to achieve that.
Yep. No, that makes perfect sense. And I believe you on the double pips. I hadn't looked at that, but for sure there are a lot of hybrids. Um,
And Jake highlights in his write up the importance of luck. I think
mm-hmm.
that's super interesting too. Um, and so that seems I guess I don't really have much to say about that exactly, but that's something that I'm making sure to keep in mind as I
Right.
approach the the cube.
Right.
Jake's really pushing on effects that are unusual effects and effects that tend toward variance, and of course, Ante is like the the
Yeah.
the banner effect
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is a luck based
Yep. Yeah. So he
effect.
had said he was. I'm recalling now the part that you're referring to. He said things that involve luck, like coin flips and whatnot. Dexterity cards. Those are like
Mm,
those
right.
are those are big in here. Kind of honestly, again, all the things that I think more traditional cubers might be more willing to kind of poo poo at. Um, typically the things that more traditional cube designers have a strong feeling on, whether it's for or against, are things like uncards, playtest cards, dexterity cards, ante, obviously, and luck. Right? We tend to eschew coin flips and dice rolls and things like that. And this, rather than avoid them or touch on them flavorfully, embraces them wholeheartedly. And I think what I kind of imagine, um, what I kind of imagine the result being is that if you agree to play this cube um, under any conditions, you just don't know what you're in for. No matter, like, if we didn't change a single card and we played this 1,000 times, the 1,001st time would probably be just as wild and unexpected and as um, novel as the first one. Is my assumption. Um, just because there's so much possibility for variance. There's so much possibility for shenanigans, for which I think that's actually in here, isn't it? I remember saying, yeah, I did. Yeah, I thought so. I thought I saw shenanigans in here. That this is truly the Wild West, and honestly, this might be a cube that comes quite close to hitting the same mark that the Live the Dream cube was going for, which was the feel of like a really good, fun, community-based EDH game. Like, you know, just lots of turns of like, you think you're winning, then you're losing, then you're winning, and someone else is like out of the game, but somehow they're back, and like, you know, just so many things happening that you just have to laugh and have a good time.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I like in the description Jake talks about like having a beer with friends after a long GP or something,
Yeah.
and you just want to get up to some some total
Yep.
nonsense.
Yep.
That's cool. And this, yeah, this cube has this. I mean, not. It sort of thumbs its nose at convention or something.
Yeah.
It's got this joie de vivre about it. You know, it's a puckish cube, a puck that does some dumpster diving or something.
So Jake said with cranking the luck factor up, he really wants to make losing just as fun as winning, which is tough. But no, but I mean, I can see like, you know, to go back to Matt's earlier example, like I could see you're like, you know what? If I'm at 2 life, I'm going down swinging. I'm going to ante that Ulamog's Crusher out, and then you know you probably lose, and then you're down 3 cards, and as he mentioned, then you're sitting there next to someone else who had a similar experience, commiserating, and you're like, all right, well, what the fuck are we going to do now? Okay, well, I'm going to try putting this in, and I'm going to try this, you know, C tier card that I originally put out, or I'm going from 3 color to 4 color, or 4 color to 5 color, because you know I gave away 2 of my playables, or I gave away a mountain, or whatever, and like you just, you know, not every. It's so easy as cube designers to try to push for low variance, reliability, you know, predictability. We want tuned lists. You know, like Derek is a big proponent of having exactly 360, or he does 384 because he does packs of 16. But you know, exactly the number of cards you're going to draft, so you know everything performs, and it's all very dated and driven, and we're striving for something maybe not quite perfection, but like that. And this embraces the chaos and is like, you know, no.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. I think that's great. I can see how this has got to be a great time
Yeah,
to
for
play.
sure.
And probably results in stories almost every single time.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
I'll point out some other design decisions that I appreciate here. Cycling is great. Many of you probably know how much I love cycling, cheap cycling, and Xerox theory and that sort of thing. So Jake leans hard into cycling, particularly in expensive spells, like expensive creatures and so on. That's awesome. And then also in spells that have generic, otherwise sideboard effects, like WotC did a nice job of pushing in Amonkhet. So stuff like Forsake the Worldly, that's the 3 mana disenchant that cycles for, you know, 2 generic, that kind of thing. So I like, anyway, it's not just that I love cycling in general. I love cycling in general. So
right.
I'm excited to see it here. But more to the point, here's another awesome way that Jake has found of navigating the mana restrictions.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Poses, you know.
Yep.
On the.
Yeah, because a lot of these cycling costs are colorless.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
All these like 2 generic mana to cycle kind of effects. Yeah.
That really helps you not feel quite so bad when you're stuck on a forest or something, for 4 turns.
Yeah, right.
Now
That's cool.
we've also got the crystals, um, and the triomes, which I did not note earlier when I was looking at the fixing. We do have those as well. So there's a decent amount of fixing available.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's cool. And then like the land cycling effects too, plane cycling or
Yep.
forest cycling, that kind of stuff that'll help you find that land. That's cool. So that's a super sweet decision. Um, what else? Oh, there's I don't know how many morph cards there are. There's some number of morph and megamorph cards. That's cool. I like that.
Oh,
And this seems like an
33
environment where
morph cards.
like that makes so much sense. Um, wait, what is this? For signal. What is happening here? Is that the scavenging ooze with Mountain Dew on Forsake the Worldly?
Oh, it looks like it's a altered signed card.
But is that like the scavenging ooze guy on it or something? Is that what's going on?
Looks like it.
That's great. Oh, and so oh yeah, Steve Argyle drew this adorable little devil on there.
That's
That's
awesome.
super cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he just does something. That's cool. That's great.
That would be my preference.
Oh, that's cool. Um,
Yeah,
great.
so Morph has 33 cards spread across
Oh,
all colors.
goodness, that's even more than I imagined.
Yep.
Wow,
Yep.
that's great. And is that Megamorph too? Is that
Yeah, I just searched for anything with morph. So yep, there are some megamorphs as well.
That's cool. Well, that's
Um,
great. So Megamorph, that's another thing that is just such a fun sub sub game, um, as we will all remember, I'm sure. And so I like that that's viable here
yep.
in this particular environment. It's hard to strike the right sort of power level where morph is going to make sense. Um, oh, hey, it's Andrew. What's up, cat?
Cucking a bucket, Andrew. What's up? Speaking of someone to never feature on your stream, if you don't want to be left with a absolutely interesting legacy.
um, what else? We've mentioned the a huge number of silver bordered cards
Yeah.
and the playtest cards and so on. That's um,
Yeah, and I
that's
don't know if
awesome.
there's a good way that I can actually filter those out on here because in Scryfall you can use the is funny to pull those up, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
currently supported here. I think I would have to individually. Let me take a look. I'll work on that while you chat on the silver bordered cards.
Yeah. So again, some of you may know this about me. This isn't my cup of tea. Typically, the silver border stuff, the unsets, and that kind of thing. Like ladies' night, there's a cost reduction based on whether one's wearing women's clothing and this kind of thing. Um, but I can see that um, in this environment, it the silver border is an integral part of establishing that atmosphere, that fun-loving dumpster diving atmosphere,
Yep.
that Djake is pushing here. And I mean, I feel sort of similarly in general about the manual dexterity cards, the chaos orbs, and
Yep.
so on. But Djake has made the chaos orb like a centerpiece of the draft experience and a way of resolving games that go to time or something he's describing in that thing. So I really love that he's totally leaned into it. He's not like, I'm just going to happen to have a few manual dexterity cards in here, but this is going to be an essential feature of the gameplay experience. I'm just totally owning this thing. And he's invented this super split second idea, um, which is a super cool thing too. So these are cards. Is are the Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong mechanic here. Djake, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong about this. But there's some class of cards that get passed to the opponent on resolution. of the spell, right? So extremely powerful cards, but once you've played them, then you give them to the opponent to put in their deck.
Oh
Like
yeah, I saw some of those.
yeah, right. So that's super cool too, of
Finite.
course, right? I mean, that creates this whole other new mini game, and it's another way that decks evolve over the course of the evening of playing the thing, which, as I've already said, I think is a really neat feature of the cube. And there are some interesting ones, like Solemn Simulacrum, for instance. I mean, that one in particular struck me. I wonder, Jake, if you might if you have any words about how you decided what's finite. Like,
That would be interesting.
what's your philosophy of finite?
Yep. He
Okay,
also said Solemn's the only land hunter in the cube. That's interesting.
okay, that's cool.
And with finite, it goes to the opponent's sideboard after resolution, which is kind of cool. Does
So
that
what
for
happens?
Solemn? Does that mean it's after it dies? Because it's actually a creature. Oh, okay. So finite is to force exchange of the super powerful cards that everybody wants to play. That makes perfect sense. If Solemn is the only way to search up a land and it's colorless, of course, that's like probably the most powerful card in the cube, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah, that's super
After it
cool.
dies, it goes to the opponent's sideboard. So you get the full value out of it. You get a 2/2, and you get the land and the draw. But then when you're done with it, it goes to their sideboard. That's cool.
Yeah, I like that. That's interesting. And yeah, I can totally see that. Hey, Vandy, that's a really attractive component of this
Yeah,
environment.
yeah, yeah. At the end of your draft, it's always going to be very different than where you started from, which is it makes the whole process evolving. And this goes back to this is the same thing I was saying about the first cube, especially for those who weren't here when we started looking at the first cube today. It's a whole experience. It's so cool seeing a cube that's not just, I famously prattle about mine. What if everything's a creature? Oh, that's fun, but it's not that exciting. It's not that different. This is a whole fucking experience from his introductory speech, and then there's a
Hmm.
whole environment crafted where he's very specifically laid out. Okay, like we were just saying, we're looking at dexterity cards and uncards and playtest cards. We want all the wild experimental, because that's what uncards really are, right? They're an experiment. I mean, we saw that with um, um, this particular combo. Super Duty Death Ray was printed in unstable originally, and then within a couple of years, it was printed as a black border card in Ikoria. They absolutely 100% experiment with silver border cards to see if they're viable um, in black border Magic. And also, I have a conspiracy theory about how in unstable, um, the mechanic in there that joined two creatures together is what they were trying to do to figure out mutate. But anyway, um, this whole cube is an experience from beginning to end, and it's pervasive and it's consistent, even though the whole theme is to be inconsistent and have high variance. But the experience is consistent, and that's super cool. I love that. That's cool. Yes, Ambrose, augment. Yeah, augment was.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I don't want to hijack it, but I have a video somewhere when Ikoria was coming out. My hot takes YouTube video was talked about how augment was a experiment to see if mutate would work, or that's how they got to mutate. But anyway,
And another cool thing that I think is interesting here is that Jake has, it's my impression that inexpensive cards, in terms of mana, of course, in the cube, are often punchier cubes of modern design. Um, but by and large, I think it's fair to say that the cube centers around, older cards from older moments of design. We're focusing on this Ante kind of stuff. Um, but that's, there are also these much more modern cards here. And it seems to me that mm, the low cost creatures are often more modern cards,
Mm,
which I think is such a smart idea too, because it helps them remain relevant. And it's a way of, um, it's another lever that Djake has found for adjusting the power level
yep.
and adjusting like the how steep the power level curve is, because
Right.
so often with old border cards we end up with things like flying men, um, as a, a 1/1 flying for blue. I mean, it's just like some nonsense cards
Yeah.
for cheap cards,
Yeah.
right? But here we've got like a three bin inspector, for example, in white, which it's a dorky little 1/2 for white on the one hand, but it replaces himself, and that makes all the difference in the world, and it can do whatever other artifact shenanigans or whatever. That's a super smart idea. I like ingest as well. This was really cool. Ingest, Djake has rolled into Ante. Um, so that's a neat thing.
Okay.
And in fact, I wonder what your experience, Djake, in playing this cube is, because my naive look at the cube would make me imagine that a blue black ingest deck would be incredibly strong for as long as you can win the game for forcing the opponent to repeatedly anti stuff. If you can just like gank a bunch of cards permanently from the opponent's deck, that seems amazing.
Oh yeah. Yep. I mean, honestly, if you just get 3 or 4 of them, as long as, like you said, you win, you've hamstrung their deck pretty hard, undoubtedly. Like if you get one basic, you're doing the thing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's a cool thing. I also love how much black in particular has. Um, oh yeah, that's cool. Okay, that's good. That's a thing that you're thinking about. Um,
Oh, he hasn't got to playtest with draft since adding the ingest stuff. So he's thinking the same thing. And the color commitments are tough enough to force you out of any. Yeah, it's going to be hard to like say like,
right.
oh, I'm just going to do black, blue, and Jess because like you
Mm,
don't have the lands for it.
right. That makes sense.
So the limited,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyone in chat who's got more to say about the limited basics, go ahead and pipe up. So you don't. It's a huge element of this cube. Hey, Vandy's telling us that that makes a big difference, and that makes sense. I mean, that's literally starter deck, right? There was like either 4 or 5. Um, if you're in the winners bracket with a solid blue black ingest deck, then you probably deserve it. I love that. Wow, think about
That's
that.
cool.
Like your 3-0 decks, you have to earn it like through gameplay, right? Like you have to like battle your way to a good deck. You don't just get it in the draft. You have to earn it from your opponent, like literally tear it out of them. That's it's fantastic.
That's cool.
Oh,
Um, and I like, yeah, that mana constraint also changes how we evaluate the power level of some cards based on their castability. Like, for example, Once More with Feeling is famously a white upheaval. That's an insane card, but it costs WWWW, it
right.
costs 4 white mana pips. Um, and this must be so difficult. Djake has determined that he's made it a negative anti card, so it's got even more upside, you know,
Right.
than otherwise, and it's got cycling for it. So anyway, but if you can cast the spell, um, then yeah, you're getting a huge payoff. But it's, my goodness, extremely difficult to cast.
Mm-hmm.
I love how black has effects that mess with the ante. Do things like allow you to gank a card from opponent's ante,
Yep.
or do something like maybe look at their hand and put a card from their hand into ante or something. I may be making that up, but there's some number of effects like this that I think are super cool ways of playing with that ante space.
Right.
I love that, and leaning into that makes a lot of sense.
Well, and I think for me, one very valuable way in the little bit of kind of starting to think about it that I've done again on my own project, to think of Ante is almost think of it as an exile zone. Obviously, there's a difference there that's very important because you can trade ownership of these cards, and that's a bigger deal than just being exiled. But that's a very easy way to frame any thought. So something like you said, looking at someone's hand and forcing them to ante. I mean, that's just like existing hand disruption, right? So it's, I guess what I'm saying is that's a valuable tool to kind of frame any card that you're either thinking of adding ante to, or that you want to change to have ante, or that already has ante on it. Is, you know, how does this work when it's exile instead? It's just like ingest. You just change ingest to say ante, and boom, there's a card. Now, obviously, that creates some balance questions, but yes, like that, I think is a valuable way to look at ante in this cube.
Yeah, there might be other ways of pushing that as well, like other ways of interacting with the board that moves stuff into ante as if it were a yard or an exile zone or something like that. I mean, here I'm like moving off into the realm of custom cards, I guess, but I could imagine some removal spell like, you know, 4 and a black, target creature gets, anteed or
Anti-target
whatever,
creature.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
right. Like instead of destroy target
Yep.
creature, exile target creature, or
Yep.
whatever, anti-target creature,
Yep.
or some enchantment that says whenever a creature would die or whenever a creature would be put in the yard, it is instead anteed, or something like this. Whenever one of your creature whenever a creature you control dies, opponent antes a card.
Right.
Something like some kind of grave pact like thing.
So he's got a card here he said was a rejected playtest card from Mirage.
Oh yeah, this appanage.
Right.
Yeah, I was interested in that.
So he said it's listed as Jagged Lightning, but it's put target again, this is a issue with the custom cards, right? Put target opponent's ante pile into their graveyard. Put target permanent into your opponent's ante. Interesting. So you have to give them back any amount of stuff they've anteed, which could be significant, right? If they, so if you play Ulamog's Crusher and ante 3 cards, there's a minimum of 4 cards in your opponent's ante. So you can give them all 4 of those back, but you can destroy, air quotes destroy, because you're going to ante it, that Ulamog's Crusher. It's going to be wild.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this. This is, in my opinion, this is where it should be. Like, let's not just ante 1 or 2 cards. Let's have some really wild interaction with the ante zone. I'm on board for that.
Yeah.
I think you have to get in there like that.
Why is it called appanage, Jake? Can you talk about the name a little bit? Oh, so this is a real.
Ambrose has. Oh yeah, this is a real card. Is my understanding. That's what he made it sound like. So Daily MTG History tweeted back last September. They shared some handwritten playtest cards from Mirage, originally called Menagerie, that didn't end up seeing print. And there's a Knight Marshal and a Mystic Interference, a Sorcery Overload, and Appanage is one of them. And it's 3RR, sorcery, put your opponent's ante into his or her graveyard, put target permanent into your opponent's ante. Actually, it's target permanent, so in theory you could ante your own card if there was value to that, which I don't think we can guess. I mean, in theory, a cube that uses this much ante, there might be a card you have that you want to ante. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know why, especially since it's a sorcery. That makes it harder. Like if it were an instant, I guess I could maybe see
Sure.
be a way of.
I more meant if there's something that when you ante it will either make your opponent's deck worse or Maybe by
Mm-hmm.
being an Ante, it somehow interacts. I don't know, but
Yeah. Or it'd be like a weird kind of self balance.
right,
A
right.
weird kind of unsummoning your own creature to save it from from dying if it
B,
were.
BD has
Mhm.
already adapted to this cube. He says with appanage, anti your opponent's basics. So clearly, he's grokked on to how this
Yeah.
cube is going to work. Um,
Hmm.
yep.
A gift given to children of kings and princes to king. Oh, interesting.
Appanage is
Okay, good
traditionally a
to know,
gift given to
Ambrose.
children
Thank
of
you.
kings and princes to pay for their upkeep. Interesting. Okay, well there you go.
Huh.
This is exactly
Uh,
why Ambrose is a mod, because he's on it. He's on it. You ask
nice.
a question, he is on it.
Oh, that's great.
You're like, oh, I really wonder why it's called appanage. Bam, he's on it. Um,
Um, yeah. So then there are some others eroded here, right? So like demonic attorney says draw a card, then each player must ante 3 cards from the top of his or her library. Um, that seems. I have no idea how the balance on that card is, but I mean, that seems like a cool idea. And Dark Pact, put all cards in your ante into your hand, and then ante 3. Right. Wow. I don't know, Jake. Because I know you were asking about these in chat before and how balanced they seem. The, I mean, as we've talked about with the color pips, the fact that these are so. Dark
right,
Pact is black, 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 and Demonic Attorney is 1 black, black. I mean, that already is increasing the difficulty of casting these
right.
cards. So I'm not sure what to say about that, but except that in the case of Dark Pact, like I feel like
So
Ante 3
this
is
is
maybe a lot.
this is going to
But
be a cop out. What I would actually honestly encourage is really consider avoiding most of the anti cards that actually say anti on them already. And the only reason the two reasons I say are: one, they were very often well known to be just utterly broken. I mean, not like Uro broken, like the tearing the fabric of reality broken, you know? Um, and they were designed in a space that's so foreign to so many things that Magic has become. Um, so I almost would say, because like, you know, even something like Demonic Attorney or Contract from Below, like I was pulling those up earlier on Scryfall, because honestly, off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly what they actually do, because no one plays with them anywhere. Um, 1 mana to reset your hand is beyond. I mean, that's clinically insane. Yeah, like Hey Vandy
yeah,
said, understanding 1 mana draw 7, how broken that is like, I mean, you can't errata that.
yeah.
Eh,
Contract from Below is a crazy card.
yeah, like that's like if that, yeah, I mean, if that said anti 10, like people would play it, like just drawing 7 for 1 mana is beyond insane. So, and in fairness, I think at this point, basically what you've done here is with contract, this is not the same card, right? You haven't just errated it. You've designed a custom card. And all I would say is, if you're going to do that, go ahead and just do it. Personally, that would be my suggestion. Is this is a kind of cube that's going to not suffer, but rather benefit from a handful of actual custom cards. Just go ahead and design your own, like your own contract from below, and lean into it. Make it, maybe give it its own name if you're down for that. So I that's where I would recommend, just because like, I mean, it's so nut. Unless you're looking at it, something like Contract from Below. If you're looking at it and saying, oh, if this said anti 3, I'd play it, right? Um, um, Matt says they spent like 7,000 words in Discord and then nailed the design on Contract. Um, yeah, like if you can errata it, go for it. But if it's going to be extensive, I would actually just lean into being willing to include a handful of custom cards, because I think in my mind the ante as a mechanic where you're going to allow it to be interacted with this way, where things are going to go into and out of ante and trade and swap, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is so valuable. It's such a fun play space that simply anteing these like cards that just, I mean, they did not know what they were doing. They like, you know, no one now could possibly ever consider actually like printing a 1-mana draw set. I mean, it's so ludicrous. I can't even wrap my head around how to describe how ludicrous it is. That like, I don't know that I think they're super worth salvaging per se. But that said, I do think taking inspiration from them is fine, you know. Because another way you could tackle contract maybe, you know, would be that it's 1 mana ante a card draw 2. Like maybe that's fine, you know, at sorcery speed. I don't know. But that would be like super simple to downplay it, you know, to bring it within scale of now. Like it would be a black opt, except you have to ante and you get an extra card because ante is a steep cost, right? Because that's often that's also like that's like kind of how they view some of their design in Magic, is like you have your CMC, you have your speed, right, sorcery, instant, etc., and then you have things, you have values like cards and power and toughness, and you can add a cost or remove a benefit to achieve a net effect. And they're not always the same, right? Like 7 mana draw 7 is not the same as 1 mana draw 1 by any stretch. But when you're looking at it, you can look at something like contract and say, okay, well, obviously 1 mana draw 7 is too much. And it's actually 1 mana ante 1 draw 7. So do we want to increase the mana cost, increase the ante cost, or both? Or do we want to remove the benefit, which means dial back the draw 7? So you can turn those knobs until they kind of meet in the middle. Like, okay, well, maybe this should be 3 mana, draw 3. Maybe it should be 1 mana, draw 2. Maybe the ante needs to go up. But those are all like tiny, tiny little levers. And like Gavin Verhey has commented that what feels like a small, tiny, tiny turn on a card can be a world of difference. And a really easy example is, you know, divination and your average 4 mana draw 2 are not the same cards at all. Some of those are found in many cubes, and some of many divination is not found in many cubes, I think. Or an even easier example is your average Doomblade effect is not equivalent to a murder by a long stretch. I mean, that's a cutoff point for a lot of people. So if something is salvageable like this, where you can tune those knobs, great. But if not, I don't think there's a problem with just designing a custom card.
Yeah, something like a sleight of hand that says, look at your top 2 cards, put 1 into your hand and 1 into ante.
Yeah.
Or a ponder, maybe, that's, you know, that kind of effect.
Yep. Yeah, that's fantastic.
It could even be like if you, well, anyway, yeah. So that, yeah, I can see lots of other ways of going with making custom cards here. And like JJ says, that's of course what Djake is doing here already. I mean, Contract Below has just been, we've just wiped out the text box more or less, and that seems perfectly appropriate. Yep. Because the card's insane.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, and this is how I landed on that concept again of just going all the way nutty and doing an actual custom cube, is when I was talking it over with my playtest friend. We were talking about, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was ante in a cube? And then it was like, well, these cards are either useless or broken or both. I mean, they're just completely off the reservation. So like, Well, now you have to start adding ante into existing cards. Well, if you're doing that, then you just, it's just going further down the rabbit hole to the point of like, just make a cube where it's balanced because everyone gets access to it, right?
Right.
And yeah, as Ambrose said, you can really do it with any cost, right? You can make kicker ante. Like ante is just a resource. It's like energy or mana or cards. Cards are resources. So whenever you sacrifice, discard, or exile a card, that's a cost. You can put ante into literally any cost point. And Andrew with the poignant ante rips for cantrips that ante.
Damn it, Andrew. Oh no.
Right. I need an emote that's just damn it, Andrew. Because that's what we keep him around for. So anyway, Jake, I think there's a very deep rabbit hole and a very wide world of possibilities in this cube. I mean, in theory, any card in here that has a cost on it could have that cost adjusted or replaced by ante, or a penalty, like someone was saying with Bomat Courier, instead of exiling the cards, ante them.
Oh yeah, that's true. Right.
Someone mentioned that in chat. I'm sorry, I forget who, but they said, what if Bomat Courier, instead of they said if it anteed the cards when it dies, but if you just put them into ante in the first place, change the word exile into ante in both instances on this card, it does the same thing.
Yeah, or something like Goblin Guide, that instead of looking at the top card of opponent's library and so on, it just antes a card every time it attacks or something.
Right. Yep. Now, some things like that you have to be careful with, because discarding, exiling, and anteing are very different things, obviously, for a variety of reasons. But the more you have ways to interact with the ante zone, the better, right? If you can, someone mentioned ante as a delve mechanic earlier. But if you have a card that lets you rescue things or reanimate things from ante, then then those costs are slightly less painful. But as it stands, ante should be, I think, considered a very high cost, and you should get a lot for it.
Yeah, the delve idea is cool. You might have to pay additional mana if you're gonna anti-delve or something somehow,
right?
To make you.
Yep. Well, again, anytime you're putting cards into ante, I think it should give you a solid benefit for sure. Because it's a very dangerous thing to do too much of. If you ante 7-8 cards in a game, you're in big trouble.
Yeah. Some vampire lacerator kind of thing that makes you antes on your upkeep or something.
Yeah, Amber was saying cumulative upkeep ante 1.
Oh yeah,
that's gonna get problematic.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I like it.
I keep trying to attach it to aggro stuff for some reason. I don't even know.
I think as aggro is where you're often willing to pay any price.
Yeah, right. You take downsides to get some burst damage or more explosive start or whatever.
Right. Get those goblin guides out.
Oh yeah, or a fireball that antes or something.
Yep.
Something like that. That'd be sick.
Well, and that becomes valuable because cumulative upkeep ante is wild because you can always sack it. That's true. Yeah, you can just decide not to pay it, right?
That's true. Somebody was asking earlier about to what extent I would. Is my thing working?
Yeah, we hear you. You're good. Yep. Okay. Sound great.
Sorry, I guess my connection's bad. I'm going in and out. The extent to which I would lean into ante and all of these interesting mechanics around it, or just sort of try to ignore it. And I would I'm not putting the question well, but all that is to say, if I were sitting down to draft this thing for the first time, well, I guess I might try to lean into the anti thing just to see how it goes. Like, I mean, that would be super cool and super interesting.
Right.
If somehow this were like a PT and we were sitting down and this was like, I've never been to a PT, you guys. I'm just talking nonsense here. If I'm like really trying to spike a draft or something, I think not knowing the environment, then I would try to ignore all the anti stuff. That's just my default fallback position. I'm gonna rely on bread and butter and just try to go back to basics. So anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah.
How
No,
do
that's
you
fair.
feel about that, JJ?
That's fair. Well, I mean, the only times I ever worry about trying to spike a draft is on stream, and that's only because I want people to keep watching. And I figure if I go in and do a lot of 1-2s and 0-3s on cubes, when my original screen name presence was Cube Outside the Box, people are going to be like, he sucks, we're not watching this. But I am very much an exploratory player, so I agree that my first instinct would be to just grab any card that says Ante that looks interesting and then try to cobble it together and see. And I would assume that the first couple drafts of this cube would be a wash, where I'm just trying to learn through trial and error, because it's just so foreign to all of our predilections as Magic players, to all of our learned instinctive understanding, that I just want to play as many of them as possible, because there would be some where I'd play it and go, oh yeah, that's not going to help me. But you learn it by doing it. But then from there, you can start picking and choosing. Okay, this effect seems like it's worth it for the ante, but this one is not. I think actually, and Matt just said this in chat, if delving ante is a thing, maybe you have to cap it at X, because Fireball for 20 puts 20 cards in ante, but you immediately win, right? Like, if you have a Fireball that says, X red, ante X cards, that's not the good templating, but you know what I mean. Then literally the minute I draw it, it's an instant win, because I just ante whatever your life total is, but that's okay because I get all the ante back. And I think that is
it has to target creatures or something then, so
right,
you can't actually just burn an opponent out or something.
Well, but more to my point is that that's your basis for analyzing an ante card. The closer it gets you to winning immediately, the more it's okay to ante, because it is a gamble. Like, unlike discarding, which is still a gamble, but it's a smaller one. It's an in-game gamble, not an in-whole draft tournament gamble. With ante, you really are just dropping quarters in the slot machine, and it's like a slot machine. The more quarters you drop, the more you could win, but the more you could lose. So every ante is a roll of the dice, and anteing a couple cards to draw a bunch of cards is good. Anteing a bunch of cards to play 3-4 with reach is never going to be worth it. Unless it's literally going to save your life for sure. Like, if you're on the verge of like, okay, this 2-3, 2-4 flyer is going to kill me in a couple turns. Like, I have to play this. But you every ante worsens your deck for the next game. So you really have to make sure it's worth it. And I think the way to think of it personally is like, the closer it is to ante 20 cards win the game, the better it is, obviously. And the more that anteing is not giving you that value is where you want to back off.
Another interesting tension is that the ante mechanic makes like it's most meaningful the longer a period of time one has to play over the course of an evening or whatever, which is to say it's going to matter most presumably like at the beginning of the night.
Sure.
at the end of the night, you can sort of ante more
Yeah,
freely because
those
things
last
become
couple
more
games,
serious.
right?
When you're in your last match and you're playing for victory, then you probably want to just be going all in,
That's a good
right?
point.
Like you are playing poker or whatever, and you're just like shoving chips into the middle of the table, you know.
Right. That's a great point. Yep. Yep.
So that's cool. That I mean, it just adds another layer of complexity to how people are thinking about and
Oh yeah.
strategizing things.
No, and I'm gonna blame Jake 100% when I start trying to actually make this custom cube that I have in mind and start like making some videos about it or something, or doing it on stream or whatever. Um, but because I've thought about this stuff a lot on my own, but haven't put all of it down to words, and it's challenging to wrap your mind around. But I do like I wished stuff like energy had gone better, because I like the idea of having another resource to trade on. Um, and actually, the real problem with energy isn't energy; it's that it was always free. They were just like, here's a good card, and we've reprinted it with energy. You know, like a tune with ether, you would just fucking play a tune with ether with no energy. Like you just play it because it just gets you a land. That's like a thing we want to do. And then they were like, oh, also two energy. And it was like, no, 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 no. Like I need to trade something for that energy. It's a resource. I need to give things up. And same thing with Ante. Ante is a cost. Um, so it needs to give you a resource in return, right? You're just converting power. So I love the idea of sets or cubes or environments where you have access to a different resource that you can fiddle with, because it makes you think hard about those choices of, do I want to trade this one resource I have for something else, etc. Right? Um, and that's what I personally find really interesting about like Ante and energy and other outside resource, or even ingest. Ingest is actually I wasn't playing when that came out. And that really was only seems to have been a limited thing. Like no one's playing modern ingest, I don't think. But the idea of like ingest and processors and stuff is really cool. Like play with the exile zone. Um,
Yeah, that was a cool thing, and that was handled, pretty well for a limited environment. That was a real deck and a fun deck to play. That
yeah, yeah.
blue
But that was
vinegar
more of a
ingest.
limited thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like it was a
for,
draft.
for
It was a draft deck. Um, so yeah, I'm hard in for this Eldrazi and Taxes played with some of the ingest cards, but not played that much. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. It makes sense if you're playing Eldrazi, if you have a processor, that you might want some of that.
I wonder. I wonder, Jake, how some of the cards play. Like you run multiple jacks in the mocks. Um, so that's an extremely powerful card. Of course, it's got drawbacks and so on. Anyway, how does that play in your experience in the environment? Is that an OP card?
I gotta. There we go. Jack in the Mox.
Jack in the mocks.
Okay, right. Yeah, I know I've seen this one. Is it OP? Jake's answer: it's fun even when you lose.
Okay.
It's super balanced. So he just added another one recently. Okay.
So, and then it was still super balanced. So then you added another one, and then you had three of them.
Yep.
That's cool.
I mean, I guess you've
Yeah.
died to Jack in the Mox.
Oh no.
Um, oh, because you lose 5 life, right? Right. It's great, not
Yeah.
OP, says Matt, who's played a lot of this. Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Okay.
It's
That's
fun
good
because
to
it
know.
adds that same element of like gambling or taking a risk. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yep, yep. And
Yeah.
Jake says he's also hit the game-winning play from landing the mana source that he needed. Yep. Oh. Hey, Vandy, you do not need to tell me about Entirely Normal Armchair. Thank you for reminding me, because I actually saw that when I was scrolling through. That might be, at least from the uncards, one of my favorite cards of all time. This is exactly... Now, okay, I don't want to do this in regular Magic normally, right? Like if I'm just playing John Terrill's Cultic Cube, I don't want Entirely Normal Armchair. That's not what we're doing. But when we are playing this kind of Magic, this is exactly the kind of card I want. I draft this every time I say. So I actually have an Uncube. It's largely based around Unstable. When Unstable came out, I had a play group that was mostly people that I had taught to play Magic. A lot of them were from my work. A lot of them are goofy and silly and like the variance of Unstable type stuff. So I bought a box. I was like, fuck it, I'm buying a box. There's beautiful lands. I bought a box of Unstable. We drafted the whole box, right, which was like 3 drafts. And then as we did that, I just started sleeving it up. So we ended up with basically out of the box Unstable cube. And then I've slowly been tinkering with it, just for giggles. But we don't play it a whole lot. But hands down, Entirely Normal Armchair was my favorite card from... Thank you, Hey Vandy. Thank you so much. I'm glad that the armchair is what earned me the sub. I really appreciate it. But yes, this is fantastic. I love Entirely Normal Armchair. I've had a lot of fun playing this card. The key is to play it on like your second or third land drop, if anyone needs to know. You have to have it ready, and you just put it down with a land when you're about to like cast something. So you put it down with the land, and then you immediately tap stuff, and you're like, Doomblade your thing. Because then your opponent's thinking about the Doomblade, and they don't see the armchair maybe peeking out a little bit from your land drop. Anyway, thank you, Hey Vandy, for reminding me of that, because this is just one of the most ridiculous cards ever printed, and it's easily one of my favorites.
Oh, well, while we're on the subject of unusual cards that I just don't know anything about, tell me about You're in Command.
You're in Command? I don't know if I know that one.
Isn't that what it's called? Something about...
Oh, no, you're probably right. I'm not familiar with it. Let me pull it up on the...
No, I'm just not familiar with it. I'm not sure I have the name right. It is You're in Command.
Yep.
1 and a white sorcery.
Oh, this is a playtest card. Okay. Choose a creature you own and control. It becomes your commander, replacing any other commanders, and it starts with a commander tax of 0. That's super interesting. I wonder how that...
How does this interact with the environment? What is this guy doing for
It's
you?
a recent ad. It's a total powerhouse. It might need an anti-drawback. Presumably, and Dan said he's seen someone with a face-down spell that he made into a commander. I don't even judge on that one. Oh, wow. Yeah, presumably it's broken because you can just...
So the upside is that allows you to recast it with the commander tax or whatever?
Yeah, presumably then you just can... like it makes your creature recursive, right? So like I don't even what's a good example, like your Ravenous Chupacabra, when it dies, you can just drop it again for 6 mana, and now it's a slightly worse Noxious Gearhulk, right? And you can just keep doing that.
That's cool.
The most OP is the 6 mana Is It Cascade dude, is what Jake said in testing.
6 mana Is It Cascade dude. Let's find that guy.
No, not you, B. You are. Ethereum Horn Sorcerer. Oh, because you can bounce it for 3. So you just get a 6-drop and a 5 or something, and then you just pick it up and do it again. Sure. You can see that.
So when something would be returned to hand, if it's a commander, it instead goes to command zone. Is that true? I don't play EDH, you guys. I'm sorry. I don't know.
You can, yes. With EDH, you have the choice. Whenever your commander would go to any zone other than the battlefield, you have the option to instead put it into your command zone. So if you were
Oh,
supposed to shuffle it into your library, exile it, discard it, presumably that includes Ante, uh, meaning if you were going to Ante your commander.
huh.
Which begs the question, because I didn't look. So your in command would be absolutely broken if it was an instant, because you could respond to a creature being anteed by making it your commander and then choosing to put it in a command zone instead of anteing it. Just throwing that out there. But anyway, um, yeah. So if your commander would go to any zone other than the command zone or your um, or be on the battlefield, you can redirect it to the command zone. And Ambrose, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Ambrose just posted it, and it's not a replacement effect anymore. So I apologize. That was incorrect. The way that I worded it made it sound like it was, but
Okay.
so Jake said he just originally went through all the playtest cards and thought, is this something that I can add? Then bought them and wondered if we've heard of other people playing it.
I don't know if this is. I don't. I don't know if this makes sense in your environment, Jake, but I'll tell you the one card that I'm like super excited about lately. That's a playtest card. Is how to keep an Is It Mage busy.
I was actually, John, scrolling through our messages earlier because I was trying to find the Cultic Cube. I know you had sent me that logo before, and I scrolled past that one like twice,
Oh,
and
really?
laughed pretty hard.
Yeah.
How do we?
Bye, David. Good to see you.
Oh, Dwight, thank you for hopping in. I'll be in touch about Friday, but we'll definitely do something. Anyway, this is the card. This is the card that John's referring to.
That is such a good card. And I've got a cube I've been working on lately, and it's a lower powered environment than some of my cubes, and it has stuff like, Murmuring Mystic and things in it that trigger off of spells, um, and prowess stuff and whatever.
Yep. Yep.
That's just such a good card for going back to hand and letting you cast it again. Young Pyromancer, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Tall Rand, those kind of effects for sure. I
Yeah,
love
if you
that
don't already
spell.
have casting payoffs, that probably doesn't. Storm in the dumpster cube would be really interesting. Well, I think
Yeah,
most of us would
Storm.
agree that that's where Storm belongs.
Oh yeah, I've got Thousand Year Storm in that cube, so you can cast this thing a million times,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah. Actually,
yeah,
that's not true, Jake. Didn't someone point out that Seeker of the Way was in here? That's a prowess. Maybe that's the only one. It's also in white, so.
yeah. So that may not. Yeah, fair enough if that's not for you. I'm just saying
Yep.
that's one that I'm excited about.
No, that's a cool playtest card.
There's a black hand disruption creature. Do you have that in here that I know some people are excited about? Like our colleague Ben Fleischer was singing its praises to me. No, Frogkin, yeah, you totally got it. Frogkin Kidnapper, one in a black.
It's in here.
Yeah, one in a black creature. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. Ransom that card,
Ooh,
which means exile it, and its owner may pay 3 at any time to return it to their hand. That's a sweet card.
that's a sweet card. And
Yeah.
now it just has to say Ante instead of exile.
Yeah. Thousand Year. Oh yeah, Ambrose. Thousand Year Storm. It's sort of a. Yeah. I don't know. It's not. I'm not going to try to sell you on it being a good. I mean, it just depends on the environment, obviously.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
my
yeah,
higher
yeah,
power
yeah.
environments, Thousand Year Storm
It's not gonna
isn't
do
a
it.
good card, I don't think. But
You're
in
dead by
the
the time you get there.
power I'm going for here, and speed I'm going for here, which is slower,
Right.
it's a real thing you can do, and it's cool. It's like
What's
a
cool
cheat
about it
download.
is it's self-enclosed storm. You don't need a whole bunch of storm cards The whole point is it is its own payoff, or it is a payoff in and of itself for playing a Spellsy deck. So
Right.
I think the opportunity cost of putting that in a slower environment is less than playing it in a high powered, or then inserting a storm package, trying to make that like a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Because Storm, yeah, it's another highly parasitic
Yep.
mechanic, of
Yep.
course.
Yep.
It's true.
Yeah, and you can't really. It's pretty all or nothing. Like you can't. A few prowess duders are fine because you're just gonna have spells anyway, right? You got a bunch of bolts and stuff. Like you're just, you add a little support, you add some prowess creatures, and bam, you have a spells deck. But storm is not modular
Yeah,
that way.
but then like Turnabout and High Tide and
Yep.
stuff. I
Yep.
mean, some of these other things that you're putting in to make Storm work, you're just
Right.
not really playing outside of
Right.
that deck. I mean, Lightning Bolt's great and Ponder's great, but
Yep.
yeah.
Well, I think if unless anyone has any last minute questions, I'm very happy with where we've gone with this cube. Again, just want to reiterate, because